Hey there, friends. It's Andrew, and I am bringing you another Keyforge deck review. This time it's going to be an Age of Ascension deck called Active Zebulon of the Hive, and this is one that I opened recently on a trip down to San Diego and played in a just friendly sealed match with Mark, who you've heard on this show before, and we ended up going adaptive. His deck won the first game. We swapped. I won with his deck, and then in the third match we bid up to 6 chains, and then this deck finally managed to get a win in. And then last night I was up in Seattle for work and decided to take a trip out to Uncle's Games in Bellevue and ran this deck for Chainbound and managed to get second place for 3 chains. So that was pretty fun. And the deck that I lost to, it had 4 chains on it already, but he paid good price for it on the internet. So I don't mind losing to an expensive deck that way. So anyway, this deck turned out to be pretty good. It has Sanctum, which is I think people are rightly saying is much better in AOA than it was in Call of the Archons. And then Logos and Shadows. And, well, you'll get to see what it does here. Yeah, we start with Logos and a Binate Rupture. This one is interesting, sometimes good, sometimes bad. It's alpha, and you double your Aember and your opponent's Aember. Yeah, so very situational, but sometimes it's a pitch. I don't love it, but it can be okay. Then we have 2 copies of Cutthroat Research. Often this is just an Aember, but okay when it comes through. Yeah, so far with these cards I'm not thrilled. Although, you might get into a situation where, let's say you have all 3 of these in your hand, your opponent has 5 Aember, you can Binate Rupture and then ultimately make them just gain 1. But you're still pushing them into a forge, which I don't know how I feel about that. It gets better. Next we have Hexbion, who's 2 power, and when Hexbion is destroyed, you archive the Hexbion and the top card of your deck. And that's quite a powerful effect. I'm really happy when I can pull that off, and especially if you can put together a situation where your opponent has to kill the Hexbion. That can be pretty good, or you just ram it into things. Library of Babel. This is returning from Call the Archons. It's an artifact that exhausts to draw you a card. Then we have Professor Sutterkin, who's 2 power, and when he reaps, you draw a card for each friendly Logos creature. And that can be a pretty powerful effect. This deck isn't very creature heavy, but I did manage to do this with 3 creatures on the board once, and that felt pretty good. Standardized Testing. This one is an action that destroys each creature with the highest power and each creature with the lowest power, or lowest and highest. So let's say you're in a situation where there are lots of 2-power creatures on the board and there's no 1-power creatures. This will kill all the 2-power creatures, yours and your opponent's, and then also the highest power. So good way to get rid of things like Lollop, or one of my opponents had an Overlord Grekking. Managed to kill that this way. So it can be quite powerful. There are 2 of them, which I think is a little too much. I wish this logo spread is pretty good. Getting rid of the Cutthroats, maybe one of the Standardized Testing, I wouldn't mind. ZYX Researcher can be really great. 2 power, and the play effect is archive the top card of your deck or the top card of your discard pile. And if you use this right after putting a power card on top of your deck or on top of your discard pile, that's a really nice way to recur it. Otherwise, just getting that free archive off the top of your deck is never a bad thing. Then we have Eureka. It gains you 3 Aember. It's put together a little oddly because it has the 1 bonus Aember and then on play gain 2. And it does have alpha, so you can't play this on the same turn as a Binate Rupture. This does have to be the first thing you do on your turn, so it'll gain you 3 Aember total, and then you archive 2 random cards from your hand. And that can be kind of a drawback. Sometimes I've gotten in situations where I archived cards that I would have played that turn. But that's an okay trade-off when the worst happens for the 3 Aember. And then, in the best case scenario, you hit 2 non-logos cards, maybe even 2 from the same house, get them out of the way, and can draw more at the end of your turn. And this is a wonderful card to have in your opening hand, especially if you're going first. Play this, you're going to get to draw 2 more cards. You have 2 in the archives, 3 Aember, you're pretty happy. And then lastly, we have a Help from Future Self and Time Traveler. These, of course, returning from Call of the Archons. Time Traveler has a bonus Aember. Well, they each have a bonus Aember. Time Traveler is a 2-power creature. When you play him, you draw 2 cards, and he can exhaust to shuffle himself back into your deck. And then he's a rare. The special rare that comes with him is Help from Future Self, which has the bonus Aember. And its play effect is that you search your deck and discard pile for a Time Traveler, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then you shuffle your discard pile into your deck. That's an important and easy step to miss, that shuffling. But yeah, this tends to burn through the deck pretty quickly with all these archive effects and draw effects, and sets up the other houses pretty well. So let's look at what we have there. In Sanctum, we have Abon the Armor Smith. This is good support for the smaller creatures. It gives them +1 armor, and he can exhaust to give friendly creatures an additional +1 armor. Chal the Safeguard, 4 power, 2 armor, deploy, and taunt. This can come in after the fact next to your Abond, your Sutterkin, your Time Traveler, and protect them for later. Quite a nifty card. Hallowed Shield has been really interesting to play. It's an artifact that exhausts to choose a creature, and for the remainder of the turn, that creature can't be dealt damage. So it's like a reusable Potion of Vulnerability, or Hallowed, can't remember it. It comes up later. Yeah, but it only affects 1 creature, and that can be quite strong. It also is a little slow, so your mileage may vary. Healing Blast gains 1 bonus Aember, and you fully heal a creature. If you healed 4 or more damage this way, gain 2 Aember. So far, I haven't been able to pull off that extra 2 Aember from any of my own cards. This deck has a lot of smaller creatures. It has some that are big enough for this to work, but not a lot. Maruck is maybe the only one that it can work on. No, there's one other that'll come up later. So he's one of my 2 creatures that this could work on. No, 3, I guess. Anyway, Maruck is 5 power, 1 armor, and after Maruck prevents damage with its armor, it captures 1 for each damage just prevented. So you have to be careful if you use this with Hallowed Shield. If you use Hallowed Shield on Maruck before it attacks, then the damage isn't dealt. This is as far as I understand it, so it won't capture. You actually have to have the armor get burnt. This is really nice with Abond because that makes him have up to 2 extra armor, but 1 constantly. So he's constantly at 2 armor if Abond's on the board, and you can push him up to 3 armor, which is quite a lot of capture, especially if you're destroying a creature while you're at it. And then we have 2 copies of Protect the Weak, and this is an upgrade that gains us a bonus Aember and then gives the creature it's attached to +1 armor and taunt. And this is really nice to put on the Maruck. That means that potentially on a turn where both of these are on Maruck and Abond exhausted, Maruck could have 5 armor and do quite a lot of work that way. Get quite a lot of capture. Then we have Shield of Justice. This is what I was thinking of earlier. It's an action that has a bonus Aember, and then for the remainder of the turn, each friendly creature cannot be dealt damage. Again, that would prevent Maruck from having his armor burned, which would mean he wouldn't capture. So just be aware of that. Radiant Truth has a bonus Aember and then stuns each enemy creature that's not on a flank. That can be quite a nifty effect if your opponent is starting to get board control. Sigil of Brotherhood, artifact with 1 bonus Aember, and it has Omni. You sacrifice it, and for the remainder of the turn, you can use friendly Sanctum creatures. Both all these ones the Protect the Weaks, Shield of Justice, Radiant Truth, Sigil of Brotherhood. These are all back from Call of the Archons. The other ones are new. But Sigil, yeah, really great. It means, if I have Maruck on the board, I might even burn it and use him to kill something and capture a bunch, which can be quite cool. Lord Golgotha, 5 power, 2 armor, 3 or possibly 4 if Abon is on the table. Even more if the Protect the Weak go on Lord Golgotha. And before the fight, you deal 3 damage to each neighbor of the creature Lord Golgotha is fighting. This one is also back from Coda. Quite a strong fight effect there. And especially if you're giving extra armor, the chances that this stays on the board are quite good. 1 stood against many, bonus Aember, and then you ready and fight with a friendly creature 3 times, each time against a different enemy creature. Resolve these fights 1 at a time. I was able to use this with a Lord Golgotha once without even having anything to make it not take damage, to wipe, I think, 5 creatures off the board, ending in an Overlord Grekking that I'd managed to do 3 side damage to and then hit a second time directly. And wipe out 5 creatures from my opponent's board. Golgotha died in the end, but it was a pretty good deal, I thought. So some interesting stuff in the Sanctum here. Good board control and some Aember control going on there. Then in Shadows we have Bad Penny. I usually end up discarding. Still, Dust Chronicles, bonus Aember. If your opponent has more Aember than you, you draw a card. If you have more, you archive a card. If you break even, nothing happens. Gamgee is really nice if you can keep it on the board with some taunts or just straight board control. 2 power, elusive, and when Gamgee reaps, if your opponent has more Aember than you, you steal 1. You would get the 1 Aember for the reap first, so you have to be down by 2 before you do the reap effect. But it can be a pretty good deal. Miasma, gain a bonus Aember and your opponent skips the Forge a Key step on their next turn. That's pretty cool. 2 copies of Ronnie Wrist Clocks. I still feel like I would not be sad to do, to have a deck that had 12 Ronnie Wrist Clocks in it. I mean, it's just a very good card. Ronnie is 2 power, and when you play him, you steal an Aember, but if your opponent has 7, you steal 2 instead. Throwing Stars, deal 1 damage to up to 3 creatures. Gain an Aember for each creature destroyed that way. This is really good for taking out those powerful, annoying creatures like Dusk Witch and Mindworm. And you can use it on your own Bad Penny and then discard the Bad Penny afterwards if it works out right. Whistling Darts gains a bonus Aember and then deals 1 damage to each enemy creature. Makes you sad if your opponent has a lot of armor on. Also makes you sad if your opponent has a lot of 2 power creatures and you didn't get it on the same turn as Throwing Stars, but it can be okay. Then we have Yancey Gang, 5 power, action, steal 1. 5 power means it probably stays on the board a little bit. Having so much taunt in this deck means I have a decent chance, and this is one of 3 cards in this deck that are high enough power that Healing Blast could possibly get the bonus. Then we have Guard Disguise, which is an artifact that exhausts to sacrifice itself, and if your opponent has 3 Aember or fewer, you steal all of it. That's a pretty cool effect. Yeah, it's a pretty cool effect. Hard to get in a situation where this can trigger. But, if you have a Gamgee and Yancey Gang and this on the board, then there's a really good chance you'll be able to, get them down into the range where this takes effect. So there's good possibilities. And then lastly, we have Key of Darkness, which is the Shadows key cheating card that is back from Coda. Key of Darkness says forge a key at +6 current cost. But if your opponent has no Aember, you forge a key at +2 current cost instead. And if you can pull it off, and actually, with the Guard Disguise, maybe you are able to pull that off. That can be pretty cool. It's only 1 worse than Key Charge, and in a house that has good Aember control, so it can be quite good. I haven't gotten to a point where it worked out yet, but it seems like a good possibility there. So yeah, this did fine. Really, the only deck that it lost to was a really good one, and getting second felt good. Definitely at least a 3-chain deck. I think I could probably get it up to 6. I wouldn't expect to get this very far into. Maybe I could get it to 2 power, but I wouldn't even try to get this one to 3. But it was fun, and really enjoyed. I mean, the new logos is just so fun in terms of accelerating how your deck plays, and getting to steal, with so many Ronnies and whatnot are fun. And Sanctum just leads to some really interesting, fun choices. So I've been really enjoying this one. It's active Zebulon of the Hive once again. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Get out and forge some keys.